welcome everyone. Some new faces in the room, some old faces in the room. My name is Josh Thompson. I am the Vice President of Product Marketing at 1E. And I'm here today to talk to you about leveraging AI to manage issues before they impact the user. A very important topic, getting a lot of noise and a lot of attention in AI and how we're going to market with AI and how that affects the DEX market. All right, here we go. We got 29 minutes, let's do it. All right, the E in DEX. A few months ago, I was having a conversation with Dan Wilson, one of the Gartner analysts for the DEX space. Many of you know him, and we were talking about how a lot of the time, IT organizations really focus on managing the issues because that's what they're used to doing, right? And we see this throughout the maturity model that the analysts have discussed today. And the point that he made to me was that the E is in DEX for a reason, that the employee is there for a reason. But this is a real challenge, and we have been doing this with customers for many years now, and we see that this is a real challenge of how do you bring the employee front and center in the decision-making process when the information you get back from the employee is so subjective and sporadic and different? And how do you normalize that and make that make sense? And how do you have that user's perspective as you make decisions, as you make critical decisions? And really that comes into this feedback. And so we see these key challenges with feedback. The fickle nature of user satisfaction. I like this one, and I joke around about this in kind of a leadership sense, is if I gave everyone in this room right now $5, I'm not going to, so not to let you down. If I gave everyone in this room $5, some of you would be really happy that I gave you $5. Some of you might be upset that I didn't give you $10. And some of you might be upset that I gave you any money at all. And this is the problem that IT is facing when they're making changes, is they're going to upset some people are gonna be indifferent, and some people are gonna be upset it wasn't done better. And so the challenge that IT organizations face is how do you take that feedback and understand what that really means? How do you understand, is this a really persistent issue across my entire user base? Or is this a very vocal minority of my users that are complaining, but they're a very small percentage? And so that's a challenge, especially when balancing operations, infrastructure, security, compliance, and budget, right? So we know that IT is having to defend every line item of the budget, is having to make difficult decisions that affect different users in different ways. These are very broad decisions that have effects to different departments and how they do work. And so when you sit down and talk to these companies that are implementing DEX, especially if we use that maturity model as a concept, in the early stages is how do I get over that mountain? How do I get over that hill? How do I understand? How do I take these very objective issues, security, compliance, critical issues, but how do I solve that in a way where I bring the user front and center in the decision-making process in a meaningful way, right? And what normally happens, especially as issues become critical, that the user takes that secondary role. Maybe the organization thinks about, we have multiple options, which one's gonna affect the users the least, but they still gotta do something, and they're still gonna make it, and they're still gonna have to deal with the ramifications of the user implications down the road. So if we look at the feedback loop, and this feedback piece is really important, and you'll see why once I get to our AI announcements, is there's a limitation of relying solely on survey tools. Some organizations use Qualtrics or maybe SurveyMonkey or even 1E. We have an employee sentiment capability within our tool that allows you to survey your end users. But those feedback loops are slow, leaving IT in the dark about user reactions, and it's very difficult to understand preemptively what the issues are. It's very easy in this sense to understand in a reactive sense, in a retrospective sense, and in a validating sense in that way, right? So the existing mechanisms kind of fall short. They're reactive, user responses are vague. They're vague for a reason, because users don't know. And to have empathy for the user is the user doesn't always know what the problem is, or maybe the user does know what the problem is, but either isn't aware of or is indifferent to the ramifications of the fix for them and how that'll affect the broader organization and how that affects the other levers and stakeholders and interests that IT has to account for in making decisions. And so what we get is we get this user dissatisfaction, and we have to navigate this dissatisfaction. And that's, Autumn and Tori spoke about it earlier today. That's that climbing the hill, right? We have this unpredictable user landscape. We're trying to balance these operational priorities versus user experience, and then really balancing the operations versus satisfaction. So those are two things, right? We're talking about user experience, and then actually how satisfied those users are in the event. All right, this is the preamble. I'm gonna show you a video, I'm gonna talk through the video. In this video that's coming up next, I want you to pay close attention to intelligent sentiment, because that's the preamble that I just gave you and why that's important. And then we're gonna go through each one of these things item by item and talk about why they're important and how we got there. All right, everybody ready? All right, 1E intelligence. A hybrid edge AI approach to manage IT issues before they impact users. Intelligent sentiment. A digital twin at the edge. I'm going to talk about that. To analyze device friction, predict and prevent user frustration. That leads into our intelligent insights, a predictive AI in the cloud, predict and remediate, analyze root cause, and recommend actions to deliver a personalized digital experience for every user. All right, that drum line gets me, my heart pumping, gets me excited. Okay. So now let's bring that all together. We talk about 1E intelligence. 1E intelligence is 1E's AI approach. It's a hybrid edge AI approach. And before we can get to really understanding 1E intelligence, there's two really important things about the 1E platform and 1E as a company that everyone needs to know. One is about 2.5 years ago, the company hired a new CTO. His name is Ian Van Reenen. He came in and he pointed out that we have a digital employee experience platform that is an on-prem product that we have taken to the cloud, and we have created a cloud product with an on-prem product. And so he made a very strong decision to say that we need to now, 2.5 years ago, we need to do the work to rebuild this, to build a cloud-native platform. And I'm very excited to discuss that cloud-native platform is launching this half of this year. And that is very key into what we're gonna talk about in AI and what we're able to deliver because we were able to rebuild in a cloud-native way. The second important piece that is important to know about 1E, if you're not aware of us, is our differentiator. What makes us unique in the market is our distributed architecture. So our ability for remediations and automations to live on the edge at the endpoint and interact within milliseconds of an event versus minutes, hours, days, right? And that's what really separates us. It's that fixing things at the edge, whether that device is online or offline. Those two pieces are foundational layers that allow us to deliver AI in a very unique way, right? So the first thing I'm gonna talk about, so if you think of 1E intelligence as the collection of all our AI capabilities, let's talk about intelligent sentiment, which I told you to pay close attention to. I believe that intelligent sentiment is the real groundbreaking AI in digital employee experience because it solves this problem of understanding the end user in an objective, standardized way and helps IT make decisions in a proactive sense, right? And so we talk about digital twin AI. This is a concept, there was much consternation about this concept. The concept of a digital twin is that in the engineering world, we create digital twins so that you can simulate stressors on that item and see what the outcome is. And so the vision of intelligent sentiment is to have granular knowledge of each and every device and each and every user and understand that at every level, from all the way to the grain of sand, to the sandcastle, to the dune, to the beach, right? So if we think about that, the person, the team, the organization, the company, and be able to zoom in and zoom out and understand how IT's actions are going to affect those areas and those users, right? That's the vision. I want to be very clear, that's the vision. But what it does today is it gives a true understanding across the organization of the sentiment represented by the individuals, right? And this is the edge piece of our hybrid AI approach. And so this is a piece that is really unique to us because, like I said, our distributed model is we can actually deliver an AI engine at the edge, which this is. So this is a very basic architecture of it. We have an AI engine on the client at the edge. This AI, intelligent sentiment, acts on the edge, and it will work online, offline. It'll learn from that user. It'll learn from multiple data points from the device itself. In the onboarding process, it'll actually cue the user with questions about, is this actually frustrating you? Is this actually bothering you? Did you even notice this thing? And start to understand what levels of things bubble up to the level of frustration for the user, right? When it's connected to the internet, or when it connects to the internet, it'll report back to the 1E Intelligence repository just for model training and learn the new model, and it'll keep updating. So your enterprise, your estate is going to be constantly learning, right? So these things aren't updating in our dot revisions. This is updating continuously, and the model is learning and learning and learning and getting better and better and better as it goes. Okay, now we have an understanding of the user sentiment. So I have an understanding of the sentiment of every device in my estate. But that actually, what we realized early in this is that if we don't tell you what to do with it, it's actually it's more harm than good, right? So if I say, hey, everybody's not happy, but I don't tell you what they're not happy about, or I don't tell you how to address that, then it's like, that's not very helpful to me, and actually it's kind of harmful to my job. And so that's where intelligent insights comes in. So this is deep root cause analysis to predict and remediate issues fast and forever. This is going to not only provide the insights of what is affecting that sentiment, but also start to provide the recommendations and to prioritize those issues. It's kind of hard to see if you're kind of in that bottom right corner. There's high priority, low priority, how many devices are affected. And the AI is going to understand this and provide these predictions, right? None of this is going to act on its own. There's always a human in the loop. But what we're trying to do is we're trying to take those reaction cycles, those feedback loops, and drill them all the way down as fast as possible and be able to react and act as quickly as possible on these things. Intelligent Insights is our cloud AI, right? So with the hybrid edge, we have the edge AI is intelligent sentiment. Intelligent Insights is the cloud. Combining the two is what is a unique differentiator for 1E. If we look at that same type of architecture here, is that intelligence repository is going to live in the cloud. Your estate is going to collect the data. The AI model is going to continuously learn. There is some generative AI integration in there so to make it make sense and produce the context. But it's going to start to give you that understanding of the insights and the prioritization of what to do and when to do it. So for those of you who have followed us, these two things are not new to you. We announced them the last couple of weeks. They're very new, but they're not new to you. We announced them the last couple of weeks. So the two bombshells I'm dropping today is one is the cloud native platform. That's probably new to a lot of people in this room. But the other thing that I'm going to talk about today is the next slide, which is we haven't discussed publicly until right now, is our 1E Assistant. This is our chatbot integration into our platform that is going to connect all of those things together. Now, when I kind of started in this role and we started to build out this AI messaging for the company, about a year ago, maybe a little bit longer when ChatGPT became very popular, there's a lot of pressure. We need a chatbot in the product. You need a chatbot in the product. You need a chatbot in the product. And our product organization was very clear that, I give them a lot of credit because they stood their ground on this, is that relatively, generally easy to put the chatbot in the product. But how do we do it in a unique way, in a way that differentiates us in the market and drives and delivers true digital employee experience outcomes in a unique way? And so the thing that we needed to get done first was the intelligent insights, the intelligent sentiment, and then the chatbot is gonna allow you to ask it questions and ask about remediations and different automation scripts, and whatever it recommends, you can ask it, well, what if we did it this way? What does that do? And it gives that broader context. And the discipline to wait to have this full, deep, rich AI approach, I think was very important and something I'm very excited about as a product marketer. And so all that coming together, we have the predictive management through that digital twin concept with the vision of being able to actually simulate how changes are going to affect the system, the estate across. So if you have a change you want to make, you can theoretically envision, simulate what's going to happen. And then we're providing real-time solutions with real-time impact. But we are not an AI company, right? And so some of you may not know us until just this moment. So I think it's really important to point out that we're not an AI company. We are a digital employee experience company. We have a digital employee experience platform. And the core piece is how do we bring AI, this one intelligence layer, and make it provide value to digital employee experience outcomes. We have for a long time been able to remediate and automate issues at the edge, to observe those changes, and then to validate the changes and to validate the decisions made in the environment. The core piece that I'm presenting today is that AI is just a key capability across that, and it's just furthering our capability in the market. One thing I do want to point out on this slide is those green boxes, the solutions. I thought about this today. In the maturity model that the Gartner analysts have been discussing today, is that on that level 1 maturity, we noticed that, maybe we didn't articulate it in the way they did, but we noticed that problem in the market last year, is we have these level 1 maturity people who have organizations, who have the desire to have a DEX tool, but the organization is not ready to consume it yet. And so what we did is we started to create solutions, which are a cross-section of the platform, that solve a very specific pain point. And so we're able to sell this specifically to get started, and our first 2 solutions are one for Microsoft Intune and one for Device Refresh. We thought we were going to sell them to net new customers, and we have. But what we found is a lot of our current customers have asked us to add it on also because they really are interested, and those are very impactful use cases. But back to the platform, highlighted there, we have the distributed architecture for real-time response, thousands of DEX automations, and this really for us boils into 2 big buckets of use cases, which are autonomous digital workplace management and real-time service desk troubleshooting and resolution. Autonomous digital workplace management, that's kind of a new concept, but our core bread and butter has been that real-time service desk troubleshooting and resolution, especially when it comes to ServiceNow and allowing the service desk to action things in real time within the ServiceNow console has been a really strong suit for us for a long time. So let's talk about autonomous DEX. So the autonomous DEX, and so we talked about the problem of the sentiment, we talked about the AI announcements, so now let's talk about how this all comes together. So autonomous DEX is start to deliver these outcomes around predictive insights, workplace analytics, seamless IT operations, and frictionless user experience to detect drift, intercept friction, and avoid frustration. All of this is in a way to mature your organization to consume a DEX concept and tool, and to deliver strong outcomes that allow you to grow as you grow and mature in the concept. So let's break this down a little bit more. So digital friction is business friction, right? Digital friction manifests as application crashes, incompatible drivers, slow boot times, leads to missed meetings, productivity issues, and that drives, especially service desks, that drives those costs upwards. And so the question is like right now we have a loop. We see a problem, we identify issues, we try to fix that problem, we see how it went. How do we speed that up? How do we supercharge that loop, right? And we know that users raise tickets, not computers. And so step one is bringing intelligent sentiment into this process. It now gives IT a proactive view to solve tickets before they become tickets, to solve issues before they bubble up to the level of frustration that crosses the threshold for a user to submit a ticket to fix an issue. So in the currently and in the past, the way that we would have to do that is we would start to see, maybe we have some diagnostics and monitoring and observability, and we can see some things. Maybe we start to see trends in service desk tickets piling up, and that alerts us to go fix those issues. But now with intelligent sentiment, we should be able to see that, and we are able to see the issues bubbling up before they hit that threshold of frustration. And intelligent sentiment provides a data-driven insight into the end-user sentiment without the surveys. And so we know that not all service tickets are created equal. So the priority becomes a problem, right? Is how do we start to prioritize these issues? And that's where Intelligent Insights comes in. And so Intelligent Insights surfaces trending and urgent issues that might otherwise go unnoticed and prioritizes them and lets that admin have the most amount of information in front of them to make sound decisions with the employee front and center in the decision-making process. And another key aspect of this is now we can start to deliver and measure success outcomes and DEX improvements. So that's another key piece of that DEX maturity is how are you measuring, what are your KPIs, right? How are you measured? And this starts to give you a way to measure actual outcomes and what you've changed. So those insights are great, but for the insights, you need recommendations, right? So let's get you started. How do you put your best engineer on every issue, right? How do you get the closest to the right answer right off the bat? And that's where the One Assistant comes in and throughout the different pieces of the interface for Intelligent Insights. As we start to provide these recommendations that accelerate root cause analysis by overlaying configuration, drift, and digital friction, quickly identifying the best fix among the 3,000 plus DEX automations, and then allowing, of course, our platform allows you and organizations to create your own automations and remediations. And the assistant can help answer questions about those and test those things out. And that all comes down to solving problems before they impact users, right? That's the key to autonomous DEX. That's what we're trying to accomplish with One Intelligence, with our AI approaches, with our hybrid edge AI, is how do we represent the employee in the decision-making process, bring them front and center in how IT delivers outcomes to their organization, and how IT measures themselves, and how IT grows across the maturity scope of delivering these outcomes in a meaningful way, right? We need to, when it comes down to it, we all have to provide the proof of what we're doing. We have to provide the measurement of what we're doing. We have to know exactly what changes we're making. And this One Intelligence is what is leading the way towards that. And that brings us to the automation at the edge, right? Endpoint automation addresses user frustration proactively, preventing tickets, reducing costs, and improving end-user experience. So hybrid edge AI is better for users, it's better for the business. Autonomous DEX goes beyond automation to make decisions at the edge. We become user-centric by instrumenting remediation outcomes. One can autonomously curate the device and maximize the end-user experience. So that brings us all the way back to the beginning, is the E is in DEX for a reason, and we need to surface the employee and bring that employee information front and center in the decision-making process so IT can deliver these outcomes consistently and with objective information that they can count on that is going to be standardized across the decision-making process. Now, I want to point out, The sentiment surveys are still very, very important and should still be used. But now what it happens is now we can start to use those to validate the decisions. We can start to use those for retrospectives. We can start to use those to really understand the user and allow them time to answer these questions and the time that IT normally doesn't have. And with that, I hope you join us to shape the future of DEX. The QR code here is going to take you to an ebook that's going to show you a bunch of information around the AI stuff that I discussed. At our booth, we're at booth 406 in the expo hall. We have some very technical, super intelligent, wonderful people there to answer any of your questions, show you the tech itself, show you where it's at today, and talk to you about how you can get your hands on it and test it in your environment. Thank you for your time.